interesting is this. I tell you what, folks, such is the state of American journalism today that when the old standbys, the drive-by media, report factually accurate and true stories about a ranking Democrat, people on our side immediately concoct conspiracy theories to explain it rather than just accept it for what it is. It just can't be what it is. But I don't care where you go to the Washington Post, you go to the New York Times, you go to Ron Fournier, you go to Reuters, and I am telling you they are slitting Mrs. Clinton's political throat. They are going for the carotid artery on this. In fact, some are even resorting to calling the Clinton Family Foundation the Clinton Crime Family Foundation in order to illustrate exactly what's going on. Other people are starting to discuss the possibility of RICO trials and the organized crime statute. Go after somebody with a RICO. And again, such is the state of American journalism that when all of this is happening, Washington Post, New York Times, Reuters, Ron Fournier, when we're getting true and accurate and no holds barred stories on Mrs. Clinton and Bill Clinton and their phony, fraudulent foundation, people on our side are suspicious. There has to be something that we don't see to explain this, because it can't be what it is. There has to be more to it. And I have been collecting theories all day long. I think it's fascinating. I'm blown away by it. Anyway, greetings. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Great to have you here. Thursday already. Fastest 3 hours in media. Some of the theories that I am hearing, well, they're just trying to get this out of the way so that it'll be smooth sailing after Mrs. Clinton and her husband withstand this. They're in fact throwing the kitchen sink out there. And if Mrs. Clinton can survive this, then it's smooth sailing, and we in the media can say that we've done our job, that we didn't show any favoritism or bias. Others are saying, no. They want her gone. They have never wanted Mrs. Clinton. They've supported her because she seemed like the presumptive nominee. And if it comes down to Mrs. Clinton and a Republican, it's no contest. And so even if they have to swallow hard, they're going to support her. But now there's a chance to get rid of her. What they really have never wanted her in the first place, goes the theory. What they really want is this Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren. They really want her in the drive-by media. And so this is the first step toward forcing Mrs. Clinton out. There are other theories that I have heard bandied about that are variations on those two themes. But everybody has a theory. Nobody is taking the news stories at face value and saying, wow, they're really going after Hillary. Such is the state of American journalism. Nobody believes it. Everybody thinks there has to be an ulterior motive. Okay, let's just get started. In case some of this is Greek to you, you don't know what I'm talking. I don't mean to insult Greeks there, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, just sit tight. Oh, let's add something else to this. While the story of the Clintons and their foundation and selling influence and enabling the sale of uranium to the Ruskies, while the story was breaking and everybody, I'm talking about cable news everywhere, was totally devoted to it, all of a sudden, we were treated to a news story. 2 al-Qaeda hostages accidentally killed in a U.S. strike. Obama today offered an emotional apology for the accidental killing of 2 hostages held by al-Qaeda, one of them American, in a U.S. government counterterrorism operation in January. So you see, we had a drone attack against some terrorists in January. 2 Americans were killed. They announce it today, right in the middle of the heat on the reporting of the fraud going on at the Clinton Family Foundation. So that's another theory, that the White House is trying to save Hillary by deflecting the coverage, by Obama going out, taking responsibility and apologizing for the death of 2 Americans that we now learn happened in January. They're just announcing it today. So the conspiracy theories are alive and they're on fire. Here is what we're talking about. Let's, first one, Michael Walsh. This is from pjmedia.com. And his theory is that the media is begging Hillary to get out of the race before they really have to hurt her. His theory that all of these stories about the foundation and the fraud and the selling of influence while she was Secretary of State can be explained by the media saying, look, this is a tip of the iceberg, Bill and Hillary, and we don't want to report what else we've got. If you don't get out and get out now, we're going to have no choice, and we're going to really have to hurt you. It's really damaging what we've got. We've tried to hold this out as long as we can. We've held back. We've tried to cover other things, but we've reached critical mass, and we can't cover this stuff up anymore. We can't keep it secret. So here's the first dump, and if you stay in, oh my God, we can't promise this could end up destroying you, and we really don't want to destroy. That's his theory. The media sending a message: get out now, while we can still help you. You get out now, and we will make sure there are no more stories. Hillary Clinton's family charities are refiling at least 5 annual tax returns after a Reuters review found errors in how they reported donations from governments. And they said they may audit other Clinton Foundation returns in case of other errors. The foundation and its listed donors have been under intense scrutiny in recent weeks. Republican critics say the foundation makes Clinton vulnerable to undue influence. Her campaign team calls these claims absurd conspiracy theories. The errors made by the charities, the Clinton charities, generally take the form of underreporting or overreporting by millions of dollars, donations from foreign governments, or in other instances, omitting to break out government donations entirely when reporting revenue. When is the last time, and I know it's happened, but when is the last time you have heard of 2 people becoming ridiculously, fabulously wealthy via a charity? Most charities are set up to do good for the supposed beneficiaries. And we were in New York last night. Catherine and I, we had a table, a Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation Ball at the Waldorfist area. They have a 99% pass-through. Every dollar donated, 99 cents gets to the children of Marines killed in action. It's a charity that sets up college scholarships for the kids of Marines killed in action, and sometimes other servicemen. And last night was their annual big ball, 20th anniversary last night. Some charities have a 78% pass-through, some charity 80%. Leukemia, lymphomas around 95, 96%. The Clinton Foundation, it looks like all the money coming in goes to Bill and Hillary. Honest to God, it does look like the lion's share of what comes in goes to them. And the donations take the form of payments for speeches or policy directives. It's incredible. And the media is reporting all of this. This is the kind of stuff the media used to cover up. And when it leaked out, blame Republicans for being focused on things that don't matter. That's why people on our side don't quite know what to do with this. They've never seen this kind of bloodletting before. The drive-by media aimed at any Democrat, much less Clinton. Snerdley walked in here today, practically unable to speak. He was so blown away by what he's reading here. He can't believe he's never seen this kind of throat slitting by the drive-by media aimed at any Democrat. He can't recall it. Now, we could probably, if we think back, we could probably think of examples of this. But the point is, this is so, it is so destructive. And at the darlings of the party, So I went back and actually looked. The first story on this about the Clinton Family Foundation and it being a slush fund. It started in August of 2013. If the truth be known, the New York Times actually led the way on all of this. They had a very long and detailed article, the Clinton Family Slush Fund Foundation, way back in August of 2013. It was called Unease at Clinton Foundation Over Finances and Ambitions. And we spoke about it at length when it came out in August of 2013. But like everybody else back then, we didn't expect it to go any further than that. It was just a one-time story, get it out of the way, clear the decks, as one of the theories today goes. Clears the decks. Media says we covered it. Hillary remains unscathed and marches on to the campaign. And another way of looking at this, too, you might say, but Rush. If you're a student of this program especially, you would say, but Rush. You've always told us that in news stories like this, if it doesn't reach the low information voter, if it doesn't reach TMZ, if it doesn't reach Yahoo News, if it doesn't reach any of the news sources that the low information crowd sees, it isn't going to matter. Nobody's going to know about it. And you would be right, except in this case, I don't think the low information crowd is the audience. I have always said, ladies and gentlemen, that one of the big problems with the drive-by media is they do not connect with their audience. And the reason is you and I are not their audience. When you get right down to brass tacks, I mean, how can CNN still be on the air with no audience? How can MSNBC have been on the air with no audience? In the old days, they're gone, kaput. Something else is tried, but they stay. And they double down on what they're doing that's losing audience. Now, they're losing audience in the general population, the general public, but just as is the case with this story, the audience is other journalists. The audience is the establishment of both parties inside the Beltway, all the way up and down the New York, Washington, Boston corridor. This news is not intended yet for the low information voter. If it were intended for the low information voter, it'd be cast and written, crafted in a different way. This is specifically, this stuff is being written, reported, positioned for other journalists. This is to get everybody in the drive-by media up to speed on what the theme of the day is, what the narrative of, as we've heard, what the narrative, the narrative is, a template, what it is. And because it's in so many places, the point is being drilled home that it's serious. So the fact that it might not trickle down, as they say, to the low information voter does not discount this. So you could arguably say, if Michael Walsh at PJ Media is right, and that the media is begging Hillary to get out, and the only reason they would do that, by the way, is if they had somebody else they like either as much or more. And they do. Elizabeth Warren. They would much prefer Elizabeth Warren to Hillary. Some of them might even prefer Martin O'Malley to Hillary. Remember I made a joke, the Clinton campaign spokesman for the 2016 race, this time no surprises. That's up in smoke. I'm telling you, go back to 2008 and now this year, and there is somebody that does not want this woman to be president on the Democrat side of the aisle. It's either somebody or a series of somebodies, but this was supposed to be smooth sailing again, right? We were back here to Coronation 2. This was going to be hers. It was her turn. It was her time. This was ultimate payback. Payback 1 was going to be 2008, but lo and behold, a better option presented himself. Barack Hussein, also known as the One. The theory went, there's a lot of sympathy, people feeling bad. The party had promised Hillary, and then they pulled a rug out from under. So 2016, The Republicans are a non-factor. The party's in a little bit of disarray. Ideal time. Get Hillary in there, get her out of the way, get her elected, get her president, pay her off. Somebody doesn't want that to happen. You sit tight. The details of this are juicy, my friends, and I'd be interested in your theories, too. Because I know that those of you who are up to speed on it and those of you who are about to learn will not just sit there and accept this at face value. You will not say, well, the Times came across some information about the foundation and they're reporting it. You will not say that. You will have your own theory to explain it, because this kind of reporting on Democrats just does not happen.
Survey proven the most readily identifiable talk show host in America. Rush on the EIB network.
The news and
welcome back. Rush Limbaugh having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. I was just telling these guys, I just got confirmation that I'm going to be receiving 1 and maybe 2 Apple Watches tomorrow, and I don't even care. If it were iPhones, when it's 3 weeks before an iPhone release, I am pounding the pavement. I'm shaking the bushes. I try to get at least 15 of them with the hope of getting 1 on launch day. In this case, I haven't lifted a finger to get a watch, and here I've just been learned just now, just during the break, that I've got 2 coming. And no, Snurdly, they're not the gold things. These are the cheap models. But see, that's the thing. Doesn't matter, cheap or expensive, they're all the same in terms of the consumer electronics. You know, Apple, speaking of which, I have to mention this. I don't understand this marketing at all. They have been saying for the last month that you cannot walk into a store and buy a watch on what their supposed launch day was, which was tomorrow. You just can't do it. They haven't made enough. They're not making a lot. They're waiting to see what people want rather than make a lot of every type and model and combo so they don't eat up a lot of capital creating inventory. So they're basically, after the initial run of 3 million, they're building them to order, which is why it's taking so long for people to get theirs. And they have said you can't walk into a store and get one. You have to order them online. And last night, you know what they did? They announced in higher end, elite, snobbish boutiques, you can walk in tomorrow and buy a watch. In London, in Milan, in Tokyo, in Los Angeles, and there's one other place. After all of these weeks of telling their customer base, sorry, you have to order online. There will not be any stock anywhere in Apple stores on launch day, except now at these little kiosks in these high-end boutiques. It is clear to me now. This watch is an entirely different thing for these people. This is not a gadget. They are entering the fashion world. They are entering high fashion, and that's what this is. It's an entirely different thing. It's got consumer electronic guts. One way of putting it, their celebrity designer, Johnny Ive. It's almost like he's tired of being Johnny Ive and now wants to be Johnny Versace. Well, Oscar did it. Well, pick one that's still alive, but he wants to... obviously what's happening here. And they might run the risk here of really alienating their loyal customer base. I don't know how much that would hurt, because the loyalty is so deep. No, the Clinton stuff just bores me no matter what. We'll get back to it. Hang in there.
Drew Steele.
I really like all the things you're saying.
Weekday mornings from 5 to 9.
Thank you very, very much.
On 92.5 Fox News. From Southwest Florida's news leader, this is a Wink News Update.
A Fort Myers Beach home is gone after a fire destroys it overnight. Firefighters were at the scene all night on Andre Mar Drive. Flames were still showing when Wink News arrived, and the fire department had a hard time with hot spots because some of the ceiling and floors collapsed. There were at least 2 people at home at the time, but they got out safely along with their dogs.
The biggest challenge was, of course, access. As you can see, it's pretty overgrown with vegetation, but there were really no challenges. We have a good water supply, and our crews were able to mount a very aggressive defensive attack on this fire.
The cause of the fire remains under investigation. An elaborate theft ring just uncovered in Southwest Florida. It happened at a storage facility in North Fort Myers. Wink News was first on scene when special agents raided that facility on Littleton Road Wednesday. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement tells us there were trucks, gas containers, and purses at the facility connected to a vehicle theft ring. 4 people were arrested in connection to the case. A little third grader is doing big things when it comes to saving our beaches here in Southwest Florida, inventing a place where you can store trash when there's no garbage can nearby. The Trash Stash comes in 4 different colors. Eleanor Rienzo created the reusable and personal-sized trash bag after seeing a lot of litter on the beach. She got the idea from a Youth Ocean Conservation Summit and applied and received a $500 Disney grant to make it a reality.
The money just goes back in so that we can make more bags, maybe get a farmer's market booth, whatever we need to do for the trash stash.
Eleanor sells her trash stashes at the Sanibel Island Farmers Market on Sundays. It's 84 degrees in Iona.
Wink News, the Weather Authority.
As we head into your Thursday afternoon, keep the umbrella on hand because scattered rain and a couple thunderstorms will be possible. We'll see a mix of sun and clouds, and temperatures will make it well into the 80s. Highs today near 88 degrees. Wind will be out of the southwest, 5 to 10 miles per hour. I'm Wink News meteorologist Mary Mays.
From Southwest Florida's news leader, I'm Bob Alexander, Wink News.
Wink News at the top and bottom of every hour from Southwest Florida's news leader.
Rock Solid wants you to be our customer.
This is Ken Fisher, Rock Solid. We have over 4,000 slabs in stock and new beautiful material arriving daily. Also, for a limited time, Rock Solid is now offering granite countertops installed starting as low as $29 a square foot and an additional 10% off on selected items to make your deal even sweeter. Rock Solid is installing over 100 kitchens a week, so if you're in need of new countertops, come down today and join our list of happy customers. It's just that easy.
Hi, my name is Tina Sakonis. I'm so thrilled to be telling you about our wonderful Rock Solid family. They gave us the kitchen we always dreamt of. They're making my daughter happy. Rock Solid rocks.
So rush to 2240 JNC Boulevard in Naples. Call 596-7676 or visit HugeGraniteDeals.com. Now that is really big.
If you've been injured in an automobile accident, visit forthepeople.com for answers to your questions. No recovery, no fee. The consultation is free. Morgan & Morgan, for the people.
Don't miss a minute.
It almost seems common sense, but, alas, common sense isn't so common these days.
Drew Steele.
Unbelievable.
On 92.5 Fox News.
The Sir Douglas Quintet from somewhere parts unknown in Texas. She's about a mover. In 1965 in the bumper rotation here at the EIB network. I knew this was going to happen. I knew it, so I'm going to grab a call. Jeff, Iowa City, Iowa. You're first today. Great to have you on the EIB network, sir. Hello.
Thanks, Rush. Getting right to the point, Elizabeth Warren, I just don't see has any sort of charisma like Obama did. I think there's got to be another reason that the media is doing this to Hillary.
You're having a hard time with it. Why are you having a hard time?
Because there's always sort of a rug that's pulled underneath you. Every time we think that the liberal media is going one way, then they completely flip it around. I was sitting here on hold, and the thing that I thought of was, do you think it's possible that since the Republicans are pulling back on going after Hillary full force, that they're going to put this up in such a way that it looks like the media is getting down on Hillary, so the Republicans will come back and argue it, and then they'll say the poor woman is getting beat up. Like, there's got to be a rope-a-dope somewhere.
Yeah, see, this is my point. That's a first. That all of this is aimed at rope-a-doping the Republicans. You see, folks, Jeff, I cannot thank you enough. I cannot tell you how helpful your call is. That's exactly what I'm talking about. We have been so trained. We're like mice, gerbils running around the wheel. It never stops. We're so convinced. Everything the media does is designed to negatively impact the Republicans. It's a rope-a-dope, whatever it is. It's designed to expose the Republicans as buffoons, mean-spirited extremists, sexist bigots, racist homophobes, you name it. My mind had not gone in that direction on this. I'll tell you where my mind is going. Who knows what's in Hillary's emails? Because all of this is in those emails. Why do you think she had a private email server? To keep it from everybody else. She wanted her own server, not the State Department server, because she and Bill, there's no doubt they're out selling access to a future presidency, is what they are doing here. They are selling access. They are making commitments, policy commitments, in exchange for huge money that they are converting to personal use. These people have been obsessed. Do not doubt me on this. I know many of you were not alive or old enough to pay attention back in the early 90s with the Whitewater scandal. Everybody misunderstands what that was all about. That was the Clintons just trying to get rich by cutting corners, which is what they thought everybody who got rich did. Getting rich did not involve hard work and long preparation and expertise. It involved networking and contacts and who did you know and what could they do for you? What favors could they do in exchange for what you could return or give them back? Whitewater was a get-rich-quick scheme. The Clintons have never had any money individually, and they were obsessed by that. In politics, they're running around people who have more money than they can shake a stick at. They didn't have anything. That's what Mrs. Clinton talks about being broke when they left the White House. I'm sure in her mind they were, compared to the people they run with. The people they run with own 3 private jets, own islands. Make a phone call and there's a bevy of women waiting in the living room when you arrive where you're going to your private island. You think Bill Clinton wouldn't like to have something like that himself? They're salivating over this stuff. So this is no question that they've been salivating for the longest time about becoming filthy, filthy rich. And she has been selling. They set up that family foundation as a means of collecting big money from foreign entities. And the New York Times story today is all about one of the most egregious and outrageous sales of influence that Mrs. Clinton has made. It involves uranium. I'll get to it in just a second. I should have gotten that out of the way in the first segment, but I wanted to focus on the media angle. If you're still frustrated and wondering specifically what I'm talking about, I'm sorry, but stick with me. I'll get to it here in just a second. I really think that when these things start to happen, you always have to look at who benefits. And the question, who benefits from Mrs. Clinton swirling, and not forget Republicans. I don't think this has a thing to do with the Republicans yet, but I totally understand those of you who do. People on our side have PTSD, shell shock, and using my old phrase, intelligence guided by experience. In the past, the media has existed for one reason, destroy us. The Democrat Party has existed for one reason, destroy us. And I have warned you, I have guided you, I have trained you to look at news in such a way as to see the angle in it that destroys us. And many of you are doing that in this case, and I do not blame you, but I don't think that's what's happening here yet. I think the regime is behind these leaks. I think the regime, Valerie Jarrett, they know what's on that server of Hillary's. They knew what she was doing, just like they withheld what they knew about Petraeus until it was time to deal with him. There's no love lost between these two. Make no mistake about it. And I think in the pit of his stomach, the last thing Obama wants is the Clintons back in the White House toying around with his agenda. And maybe trying to tweak it, change it, get rid of it, whatever, for them to take credit for whatever comes next. Because believe me, both Obama and the Clintons are obsessed with getting credit for what they do. And the last thing Obama wants, he's not even worried about the Republicans right now. Obama thinks the Republicans may not even exist. He's got the Republicans in the palm of his hand. He doesn't have to worry about them. The Republicans call him every day and say, what can we do? What can we do? How can we help? So he's not worried about them. But he damn well doesn't want this Clinton pair coming in and unraveling his agenda. And he doesn't trust them. And he likes Elizabeth Warren a lot more. Probably can control her a lot more because she might even think that she owes him more than the Clintons for whatever her political fortunes and future might hold. And in the dark horse out there is this O'Malley guy. Do not discount this guy. And I'll tell you something else. It's not a dark horse, but this Blasio guy, de Blasio, purposely distancing himself from Hillary, that you do not know how mad she is about that. She's seething mad about this. Yeah, and I was in New York last night. There's scuttlebutt. This guy wants to run for the presidency. De Blasio. So anyway, if there's any leaking going on here, and I'm not predicting it, I don't know. I am prepared to take this on face value. I am prepared to accept the notion, by the way, just so you know. You might think I'm naive, and you might think that I'm letting my hopefulness get in the way of objectivity here. But I really think it's entirely possible that Michael Walsh is right here, that the media is going for the throat here in an effort to save the Clintons, essentially. Look, because his theory, again, is that they are begging Hillary to get out before they have no choice but then to totally destroy the Clintons, meaning they know even more about what's gone on with all of this stuff, the foundation, the whatever, that we just have the tip of the iceberg. And they're saying, okay, please, Bill and Hillary, we love you. Please get out of this now before we're going to have no choice and report the rest of what we know. And then you're cooked. You leave Ron Fournier today. I mean, he's in deep pain over this. He's loved the Clintons since the 80s in Arkansas. So it could well be nothing more than that. It could be Elizabeth Warren. Could be a number of things. Again, I don't mean to be repetitive. I'm just fascinated by how A plus B can never equal C in our minds when it involves the media. That there's some unspoken conspiracy theory to explain this that we haven't yet figured out. Here's the New York Times story. This and the Reuters story, well, the Washington Post too. They're equally as devastating. The New York Times article, 4,337 words. Now, the average op-ed column in a newspaper is 750 words, just to give you something to compare it. 88 paragraphs. It is one of the most amazing articles I have ever read in the New York Times. It is one of the most unexpected articles I have ever read in the New York Times. It, in 4,337, actually it doesn't require all those words to do this. It exposes the Clintons as the most shameless influence peddlers in the history of the world, to the point of treason, folks. To the point of criminality. It's unprecedented for the New York Times to go after any Democrat like in my lifetime of memory. There may be one that I've forgotten, but none as prominent as are the Clintons. And I'll tell you something else about this New York Times story. Because it's from the New York Times, it completely destroys Hillary's claims that these charges are all just from the vast right-wing conspiracy. You know, Hillary is out there saying, yeah, well, those Republicans, that's all they've got to talk about is me, you know? That's all they're doing is talking. It's just more of the vast right-wing conspiracy. We were prepared for it, you know. The Republicans haven't said 5% of what is in this story in the New York Times. And the New York Times, unless the Schultzbergers have been kidnapped and brainwashed, are not part of the vast right-wing conspiracy. Last time I looked, that little pinch was every much the lib that any of the rest of them in the drive-by media are. Let me take a brief time out. Details next. Don't go away.
Doing the work that the mainstream American media just won't do. Rush on the EIB network.
This outsource.com.
Hey, what are you doing?
I'm taking all the signs down.
On the showroom?
Yeah, because the March promotion's over.
No, stop. I just got off the phone with no. It was the biggest promotion I ever did in Southwest Florida, and I'm just trying to get this approved today. I think I got it done. We're going to continue this promotion through the end of April. That's right. $1,000, trip for two on the cruise liner with me, and then we're going to give him a basketball shot again at the end of April. No, I'm going to get this approved. Don't take nothing down.
I don't have to take
nothing down yet. I want to continue this.
Don't go in the showroom just yet.
Listen to me. Put all this up. Put all this up. I want put all this stuff up, please. Put all this stuff up. Come on. Put it back.
I'll put it back.
Go. Put it. And then go with one of your girlfriends. Go down to the Tarpon Point. Have a cocktail somewhere. Get away from it. Get out of here.
Definitely.
I want to do this promotion. I know you were doing it. Okay, it's gonna be huge, Southwest Florida. Huge.
Sean Hannity here, reminding you to listen to me coming up today right after Rush, right here on the news and talk of Southwest Florida, 92.5 Fox News.
The New York Times story is by Joe Becker and Mike McIntyre, and here's how it begins. The headline in Pravda trumpeted President Vladimir Putin's latest coup. Russian nuclear energy conquers the world. The article, January 2013, detailed how the Russian Atomic Energy Agency had taken over a Canadian company with uranium mining stakes stretching from Central Asia to the American West. The deal made Russia one of the world's largest uranium producers and brought Putin closer to his goal of controlling much of the global uranium supply chain. The sale gave the Russians control of 1/5 of all uranium production capacity in the U.S. Now, since uranium is considered a strategic asset with implications for national security, the deal had to be approved by a committee composed of representatives from a number of United States government agencies. And among the agencies that signed off on this was the State Department, then headed by Hillary Rodham Clinton. As the Russians gradually assumed control of Uranium One in 3 separate transactions from 2009 to 2013, a flow of cash made its way to the Clinton Foundation. The chairman of Uranium One used his family foundation to make 4 donations to the Clintons, totaling $2.35 million. Those contributions were not publicly disclosed by the Clintons, despite an agreement Mrs. Clinton had struck with the Obama White House to publicly identify all donors. Other people with ties to the company made donations as well. Mrs. Clinton failed to follow through on most of her disclosure promises. This is just one example. In fact, she had even promised that the Clinton Crime Family Foundation would stop taking foreign money when she was Secretary of State, but it didn't. Shortly after the Russians announced their intention to acquire a majority stake in this Canadian company, Uranium One, Mr. Clinton, after the foundation got $2.35 million, Bill Clinton got $500,000 for a single speech in Moscow from a Russian investment bank with links to the Kremlin that was promoting stock in the Canadian uranium company, Uranium One. At the time, both the Russian Uranium Agency and the U.S. government made promises intended to ease concerns about ceding control, CED, giving away control of the company's assets to the Russians. These promises have been repeatedly broken. The New York Times examination of the Uranium One deal, this is the Canadian company, is based on dozens of interviews as well as a review of public records and security filings in Canada, Russia, and the U.S. Some of the connections between Uranium One and the Clinton Foundation were unearthed by Peter Schweitzer, a former fellow at the Hoover. They've made a deal. The New York Times is one of the papers that has made a deal with Schweitzer, this evil, hated Republican from Hoover. They made a deal exclusive with him, as did the Washington Post, some others, to exclusively report excerpts from his book. And this is one of them. Schweitzer, by the way, has said his next book is going to be going after Jeb Bush. By the way, just a little sidelight. Going to go after the Jeb Bush family finances the same way the Clintons have been pursued. Mr. Schweitzer provided a preview of material in the book to the New York Times, which scrutinized his information and then built upon it with its own reporting. So the Times is confirming what Schweitzer reports in his book and saying, we found even more. So you'd have to say here that the New York Times has joined the vast right-wing conspiracy against the Clintons if they're sidling deals up here with Schweitzer. I'm being facetious, of course. Then the Times lists donors, part of the uranium deal, to the Clinton Foundation and the amounts. Frank Giustra, $31.3 million and a pledge for $100 million more. He built a company that later merged with Uranium One. Here's the bottom line. Money was given to Bill and Hillary Clinton, passing through the Clinton Foundation, that enabled Russia to pursue their goal of controlling the uranium market in the world. Putin, again, just to remind you, has publicly stated that he wants to control that market. If he could, he'd corner it. Mrs. Clinton has enabled it, all for the opportunity to be personally, financially enriched. This is just one of the stories that's out today. Reuters has another one, and the Washington Post with yet another one. Neither of those organizations are the vast right-wing conspiracy either.
Nothing but the truth. Rush.
Judicial Watch has just announced that it has received 126 pages of documents from the State Department related to Hillary Clinton's possible conflicts of interest regarding her position as Secretary of State. The initial Freedom of Information Act request, published or placed on May the 2nd, 2011, 4 years ago, and the documents are being released today. That's right, OMG. These documents are being released as a result of a federal court order in a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit filed against the State Department May 28, 2013 by Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch also disclosed State Department turned over nearly 1,000 records to the Clinton Foundation beginning in January of 2014 for review prior to public release. The lawsuit is ongoing and had previously forced the disclosure of documents that provided a roadmap of over 200 conflict of interest rulings that led to $48 million for the Clinton Foundation and other Clinton-connected entities during her tenure as Secretary of State. The bottom line of this leak is Judicial Watch says that the State Department documents that they have been given access to reveal Bill Clinton's activities with Saudi entities and government concern about them. The documents contain concern at the highest levels of the U.S. government over Bill Clinton's activities with the Saudi entities. Now, this is just all coming at us now. We don't know how legit any of this is. This is obviously after a 4-year request, 2 years after a lawsuit. The documents released this week, today, what have you. And once again, on the other end of these documents, you find the regime. Bill Clinton could be totally in it. He might have gone over and discussed women with the king. Who knows? But the release says that the government is concerned about Bill Clinton activities with Saudi entities. Now, we already had the New York Times story where they detail Hillary Clinton facilitating Russia gaining control over the uranium market in exchange for at least $3 million of donations. And remember, there are others. The $2.3 million donation came just from the chairman of the Canadian uranium company, but there are others again. Among the donors to the Clinton Foundation that had a role in the uranium deal in Canada, Frank Justra, $31.3 million, a pledge for $100 million more. He built a company that later merged with Uranium One. Ian Telfer, $2.35 million. He's the mining investor, chairman of Uranium One, when the Russian government acquired it. Paul Reynolds donated between $1 million and $5 million. He was an advisor on the 2007 Eurasia Uranium One merger, and he later helped raise $260 million for the company. All of these people gave money to Clintons while she's Secretary of State. So she looked the other way while all this was happening. She was paid off to look the other way. She was personally enriched, as was her husband, while Russia cornered the market, or tried to, on uranium. And here's Frank Holmes, $250,000 to $500,000, chief executive, U.S. Global Investors, which held $4.7 million in shares of the Canadian uranium company in the first quarter of 2011. That's the New York Times. That is throat-slitting. That is, to all of our minds here, unprecedented. And the state of American journalism today is such that when you have just these facts, people on our side say, well, there's got to be an angle here that they're going to blame it all on the Republicans. Can't blame people for thinking that. The next story in the stack, and not necessarily in any chronological order, Washington Post. That's right, even the Washington Post getting into... In fact, the Washington Post article, I stopped editing this thing, and there are still 33 paragraphs left in it. The Washington Post story details dozens of other lavish speech payments that Bill Clinton got from foreign entities, and they're usually $500,000 or more just for a speech. And all of these entities paying Clinton to give a speech had business with the State Department when Hillary ran it. And none of these, or the vast majority, were ever disclosed. That's what the stories were about. None of these donations were disclosed. The Clintons did not disclose any. That's why the Reuters story is all about how the Clintons now are redoing all of their tax returns to finally report this stuff, because they didn't. They went Al Sharpton on the IRS. And now the cover is blown and all of this is being revealed. The Clintons are refiling all of their tax returns over the period of years involved here. Headline Washington Post, for Clinton's speech income shows how their wealth is intertwined with charity. Stop and think of that for a second. Look, folks, just two examples. Catherine and I are deeply involved with the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation. I have been since its founding in the mid-'90s. You know, we're one of their sponsors. The Rush Revere book series, children's books, time travel adventures for exceptional Americans. The Leukemia Lymphoma Society. We have been involved in donating and or raising tens of millions of dollars for both these charities. And we know the people that run them, and they're not wealthy. They're not any wealthier today than when the charity started. The Marine Corps Foundation, the Law Enforcement Foundation, has a pass-through of 99%. You give $1, 99% goes to kids of Marines killed in action. Leukemia, lymphoma is pretty close to that. There aren't people that went from nothing to a net worth of between $250 and $300 million simply by having a foundation. And the Clintons don't even have a charity. It's just a foundation. What is the charity that they do? Save Our Girls. Hashtag. What do they do? What does the Clinton Family Foundation do? What charity does it promote? Maybe it's a bunch of them, a little here, a little there, but I don't know anybody. Maybe you do. Now, if you want to look at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, NGOs, charities, donors, people there get rich. Yeah, but that's not above board either. I don't know anybody. I mean, even at some of the sleaziest charities, and we all know there have been, even at some of the sleaziest, the people that run them make $500,000 a year. But nobody that I know becomes a member of the top 1% of the 1% with a foundation. In fact, the fact of the matter is, for those of you in Rio Linda who will never have a foundation, the point of putting up, when you start a foundation and you put money into it, you lose control over that money. You are donating it, essentially. When you start a foundation, if it's a charitable, obviously, it's a charitable foundation, you give the money and it's gone. You can't go spend it yourself. I mean, the way it works in that case, let's say you come into some money, you want to start a foundation, and you do it to have a lump sum available to donate rather than have to take individual phone calls, or maybe you want a large tax deduction in 1 year. The rule of the foundation is roughly, let's say you start a foundation with $500,000. You get the deduction of $500,000 the year you put that money into it. You have to donate at least 5% of it every year. It can't just sit there. But you don't have to donate much. It can just sit there, and it can keep earning money, but it's not yours anymore. And the money that other people donate to it, it's not yours either. You don't get it. That's the whole point of it. But the Clintons have this foundation that somehow they are the charity. They go out and do a speech, raise money for the Clinton Family Foundation, $500,000 Clinton gets. He says, yeah, that's right, Limbaugh, that money goes straight to the foundation. Well, how the hell do you people have $300 million? Because all you do is give speeches. And I know that Mrs. Clinton, she didn't make anywhere near 10, 15, 20, whatever, $50 million as Secretary of State. Nobody does. Where'd this money come from? So, I mean, look, I'm not saying that every dollar donated to their foundation ends up in their back pockets, but something is awry here. Something is really out of kilter. I don't know anybody who administers or runs as CEO, whatever, of a foundation, of a charity, who essentially is the primary beneficiary of the thing. Do you know anybody who runs a foundation? Look at the people who run the Ford Foundation. Do not have a net worth of 150 or 200 million because they run the foundation. They may have it because of other things they've done in their lives or might have inherited it, but it's just unheard of here. People I know at Leukemia and the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation that don't have any more money today than they did when the thing started as a result of working with the foundation. The foundation has not contributed a dime. That's not why they've done it. I don't understand how this happens. Right, Bill and Melinda Gates. Well, yeah, but they started it. They don't need to play any games to get rich. They already played their games. You know, they already got rich. They're not a good comparison, but still, they start the foundation for other reasons, charitable included among them. But this just smells. And now the drive-by media going full bore, exposing all of this stuff and basically raising the same questions I'm raising here. How the hell does this happen? Who gets $500,000 for a freaking speech anyway? You know, one of the big things that people misunderstand, Bill Clinton, we're told that he's a funny, lovable guy, has great charisma, is one of these guys that makes you think when he's talking to you that you're the only one in the room. How many women have we heard say that? I don't care how popular he is. Anastas Mikoyan from Kazakhstan is not giving Bill Clinton $500,000 because he's a good guy. Anastas Mikoyan or whoever is giving Clinton $500,000 because he expects somehow that Clinton is going to be in a position someday to pay that back that's going to be in some way favorable to Mr. Mikoyan. And largely that's the assumption Mrs. Clinton is going to be in the White House someday. But they didn't even have to wait for that. She's Secretary of State. She can look the other way while the Russians try to corner the market in uranium. And who knows whatever else So you give Clinton $500,000. That's a message to his wife, who is the Secretary of State. And this has been going on for years. The point of this is, none of this is new. What's new is the reporting. What's new is the full-bore nuclear bomb aspect of the reporting on this. Everybody's known the Clintons have been doing this, and it's one of the many things the Clintons have been doing that we, on our side, have just thrown up our hands, just assumed forever they're always going to get away with it because they're Democrats, they're liberals, they make mincemeat of conservatives, that's why they're loved and adored, and nobody's going to ever hold them to account. And now, here we are on April 23rd, the day before the Apple Watch comes out, and not saying it has anything to do with anything, but here comes bombardment on the Clintons, and there now is sunlight being shined on all these things that everybody in the establishment in D.C. knows they've been doing all of these years anyway. And they may not be the only ones, by the way, but I mean, they are defining how to do it. Anyway, let me take a brief time out and start getting some of your phone calls in, because people do want to weigh in, and if I were you, I would want to too. So sit tight, back with more after this. We're all very proud of it.
That's your humble broadcast host talking about Rush 24/7.
The regime today announced that 2 Americans were killed in a counterterrorism raid that we initiated against Al-Qaeda. We ended up killing 2 hostages. One of them was an American with a drone strike. Okay? Announced that this morning. Obama went out to the Bergdahl Garden and sort of took responsibility for it. And then elsewhere in the regime, they said he wasn't responsible. Now, Josh Earnest is doing the press briefing. You know what he just said? He just said Congress has a role in drone policy. Congress doesn't have a role in immigration. Congress doesn't have a role in practically anything else. But now that the regime has mistakenly, erroneously killed an American in a counterterrorism op, all of a sudden, Congress has a role in the policy that sent the drone up there. I'm sure Boehner and McConnell are on the phones. What? When did we order the drone strike? That's incredible. Okay, ask. In my case, I asked. I've got the answer. I mentioned to you mere moments ago that have a post here from the Federalist.com. U.S. Constitution actually bans Hillary's foreign government payola. And I mentioned that there actually is a clause in the Constitution which bans what she did. And the clause actually has a name. It is the... I'll find it. It's not the point. The story contains some relevant information. To set it up, I must tell you Howard Dean was on TV this morning attempting to defend the Clintons and their personal wealth as a result of their foundation by saying, Howard Dean on TV saying, hey, look at all this money went to charitable causes. All of it went to things like reducing malaria and improving people's standards of living. And that simply cannot be. Otherwise, Bill and Hillary Clinton would not have such a high net worth. 150 to 300 million, I think it's reported. Anyway, the Federalist reports, here's the answer. You know, I said the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation, 99% pass-through. The Clinton Family Foundation pass-through is 15%. The Federalist reports only 15% of the money donated to the Clinton Family Foundation went to actual charitable causes. The bulk of the money donated to the Clinton Family Foundation went to travel, salaries, benefits. 60% of all the money raised went to other expenses. In other words, folks, 85% of every dollar donated to the Clinton Foundation ended up either with the Clintons or with their staff to pay for travel, salaries, and benefits. 15 cents of every dollar actually went to some charitable beneficiary. And 60, a whopping 60% of all the money donated to and raised by the Clinton Family Foundation went to a category called other expenses. And other expenses, we are left to define ourselves. Could other expenses mean salaries and benefits for the Clintons and their exhaustive hard work helping others? Well, this is your answer. There's a 15% pass-through rate at the Clinton Family Foundation. 15% of every dollar goes to a charity. 85% goes to enriching people that have anything to do with it. And that's why they're refiling tax reports, tax forms, tax returns for all of these years.
We're talking about what you're talking about.
They are not interested in assimilating, but they want to benefit.
Drew Steele, weekday mornings from 5 to 9, 92.5 Fox News.
Just one more observation, my friends, before we head to the phones, and it is this. Every bit of this news that we are reporting today with the Clintons and the foundation and the money and the donors and the causes and so forth, this has all been known. You know, another suspicious aspect of this is that the drive-by media waits until she has made her announcement. They didn't run with this stuff before she officially claimed she was seeking the presidency. They could have run this stuff 3 weeks ago, a month ago, 6 weeks ago. They sat on this stuff. They sat on this stuff until Mrs. Clinton had finished all of her paid speeches. Remember, it was even known that she was delaying her announcement until she finished the paid speech schedule, which ended in March. They waited. They waited until she committed before letting fly with all this. If I were the Clintons, I'd be shell-shocked right now. I would be, I'd be called David Brock. What the hell have you done here? You're supposed to stop this stuff from happening to us. Sidney Blumenthal, where the hell have you been? John Podesta, how did you let this happen? All the insurance policies they've hired, all the power brokers to keep this stuff from ever happening, have all failed them with their buddies in the drive-by media. There's a caveat. There could be a whole lot more to this that we don't know, that somehow will explain it all later. You never know. The Clintons might call an emergency press conference for Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock and have an answer for all of this that just sweeps the story away, and then imagine how dispirited you'd feel. Now, Snerdley is shaking his head. No, what's he going to say? I'm not a crook? No. What if they've got evidence that none of this is true? What if all this is made up? I'm just speculating here. Well, I think I do know him pretty well. I know him pretty well. But that's no question about it. That's what Whitewater was all about. Money is what drives these people. Money drives everybody. I don't care what people say. Money drives everybody. But these people obsessed. They obsessed over what they didn't have. They envied what other people did have, particularly people they ran with. And I'm telling you, from the 80s, a leftist in the 80s didn't think that rich people were legitimate. They got it by chicanery, trickery, thievery, inside knowledge, knowing somebody. It could not have been the result of hard work. That's what Whitewater was. It was their feeble attempt to pretend they were big players in a real estate market. I guarantee you, Hillary was behind that. I can guarantee you exactly why all that happened. In the old parlance, it was a get-rich-quick scheme, because that's what they thought everybody else did. And she was sick and tired. There's her husband. She gave up everything. And her husband's sitting there as governor of some hayseed state, $25,000 a year, and she has to work at the Rose Law Firm for $106,000 a year, and they're hanging around with the Thomasons, who are multimillionaires, and everybody else. Not for long, buddy. So hello, Susan McDougal and Jim What's-His-Face over at Whitewater, and that all just started the train rolling. And that gave us John Juan, Charlie Tree, the dubious Chinese barbecue place in Little Rock. I mean, it all adds up. Anyway, to the phones, because I promised. This is Jay in East Liverpool, Ohio. I'm glad you waited, sir, and welcome.
Hey, Russ. I heard your question. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to take a stab at it.
Sure.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. The biggest fear of any presidential campaign is an October surprise, right? I mean, that's what we always hear about. Most of the time they turn out, they fizzle out and turn out to be nothing. But a legitimate October surprise, and by legitimate I mean something where there's a smoking gun or something that it gives it legitimacy that people will look at it and say, yeah, you know what, this kind of fits with what I know about the candidate. And I think that's the big fear here, is that there's a smoking gun, a blue dress, if you will, that somebody's sitting on, waiting until just the right moment, because that's the other key with a good October surprise, is it's well-timed. And the problem is that the people don't know what's in her emails. And everybody thinks that the people who are most interested in those emails are the Republicans and Trey Gowdy. But I really think the people who are most interested are the ones that Hillary is going to be hitting up for tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for her campaign. And the media. I mean, once she's the candidate, she and the media are basically going to have a wedding ceremony. They're going to be joined at the hip.
Wait a second now. Wait a minute now. You're off. You got two theories here, or is this all part of one theory?
No, it's part of one theory.
Okay, hold it. Don't go any further. Let me see if I understand. I'm going to see if I'm up to speed with you right now. So you think the media is nervous about supporting Hillary, not knowing what those emails contain, because they don't want to go all in for somebody that's going to be blown away by an October surprise containing this kind of stuff. They don't want to make that mistake, so they're trying to find out what's in these emails now before they commit to her.
Right.
And this, so they're essentially now getting the October surprise out of the way a year and a half early.
I think their hope is to draw the fire. It's just like in the old war movies where there's a standoff and somebody throws a rock out into the middle of no man's land to draw the fire. So I think this is the New York Times and the others. This is their version of throwing that rock out there to see where the fire comes from, to see who's holding what, because who knows where these emails went to? Who knows how many different aides saw different emails? Who knows what's out there? And we look at it and say, well, what might be, what could we use to hurt Hillary? Well, you think that people are going to be asked to contribute hundreds of millions of dollars to campaign aren't thinking the same thing, and the people in the media? The way I look at it...
Okay, so wait. There's one thing I think I now get it. You think that the October surprise is being done now to take her out now?
Not necessarily. I think they're wanting to see if somebody's holding something, because they're going to be tempted. If you've got a damning email and you see all this other stuff coming out and the media focusing on all this, would there not be a temptation to, rather than hold your fire to October, would there not be a temptation to go ahead and go public with it now? And I think they need to know, can this horse make it across the finish line?
Who, again, now I'm losing. Who is they?
Well, I think both the media and the big money donors, because the media...
But they're finding out. Wait a minute now. They're finding out. This is enough.
I don't think they know the extent of what's out there.
So you think this is an effort to find out everything else that's in there?
Yeah, well, it's just like, okay, look, if they're getting married, basically, once she's the candidate, they are in a partnership or a marriage. If you're considering inviting somebody to get in bed with you, you want to know who else they've been in bed with. They want to know who else Hillary's been in bed with. This is their version of an STD test for Hillary. Find out where else has she been. What else might taint her going forward? Because we need to know now either to try to fix it, to deal with it, or to cut her loose and find somebody else. I don't think the media has any loyalty to the Clintons necessarily. They have their loyalty is with the Democrat Party. So I don't think they really care that much about who's the candidate, as long as it's somebody who can beat the Republicans.
That is true, and I've thought since 2008 that the media has not been all in for Hillary. Bill's a different story. Bill, they love Bill. Oh man, I mean Nina Burley said she'd give Bill a Lewinsky just for keeping abortion legal. And a Time magazine reported the women in the drive-bys love Clinton. They're still dreaming, that it was him and not Juanita Broaddrick. Them and not Juanita Broaddrick or Paula Jones. They're jealous of these people. Hillary's a different matter. She's the ice queen. She's Nurse Ratched. Well, okay, interesting theory. This is part of the vetting process, in other words. They're letting this stuff out. The donors, seeing if they can withstand the heat, find out what else is in there, do the October surprise now, and if she can't make it, find out now, dump her, and go somewhere else. Let me, before you go, do you think, this is yes or no, do you think that this is part of a process to help her get elected?
I think it's a process to find out whether or not she's going to make it across the finish line in the end. They want to know now whether this horse can cross the finish line. And if she can't, then they're going to cut her
interesting
loose.
theory that they don't want to do anything to help her do that. They want to find out, in your theory, if she can do it on her own. They're not interested in covering anything up for her. According to your theory, they don't want to help her cross the finish line. They're throwing the stuff out there. In other words, the proverbial excrement is being thrown up against the wall, and everybody's watching to see what sticks. And if too much of it sticks, it's bye-bye, sayonara, Hillary, and hello, Elizabeth Warren or whoever else. All right, cool.
The state-controlled media stops here. Rush on the EIB network.
This is 92.5 Fox News.
Okay, for you younger listeners, those of you who are millennials, and others of you who were alive and paying attention during Whitewater, but still are not sure what it really was, would you like for me to tell you in one paragraph what it was? You really want to know what Whitewater was? It's real simple, and it's real slimy. Whitewater, the Clintons' Whitewater scam with Jim McDougal and his wife Susan. He was the money guy. Clintons didn't have any money. It was a real estate scam where they bought development property, resort-type property, near bodies of water and so forth, Whitewater in Arkansas. They built homes, they bought lots, and what they did, they aimed this development at seasoned citizens. It was not an old folks home. It was single-family homes. Seasoned citizens, wealthy, moderately wealthy retirees could buy and live in single-family dwellings. The Clintons would cheat the seniors out of their down payments if the buyer missed one mortgage payment. The Clintons repossessed the property and resold it. And they did this over and over and over. It was a scam designed to sell property to people who couldn't afford it. They got the down payment from them. And then, of course, when something's financed, the finance company gives you the payment, and the person living in it makes monthly payments. So you sell a house, you get the money for it from the bank or wherever. The person with the mortgage pays the bank back. Well, the Clintons got the money, the McDougals got the money from whoever was financing it. And if these retirees missed, it was in the document, if you missed one mortgage payment, the thing was repossessed. And they did this, and they kept flipping these properties over and over. I mean, it was targeted to the seasoned citizen population, but it was not just limited to them. But the people that ended up getting approval to buy property were people who it was suspected might not be able to make a payment at some point. And when they missed one, the Whitewater Development Corporation swept in there and repossessed the property and kicked out the old folks and resold the property. That's essentially what Whitewater was. Now, it took the New York Times, gosh, how many days and reams of paper and words to explain it all. But if you're like me and you can make the complex understandable, that's essentially what it was. The Clintons were the original predatory lenders. The Clintons were the ones that told the subprime guys, showed the subprime guys how it's done. You qualify people who aren't qualified. You take advantage of them when they can't pay. You repossess and you resell it. The subprime was obviously a little different than that, but that's what Whitewater was. It was a get-rich-quick scheme. It was designed to sell again and again properties over and over. Not sell a bunch of properties, just sell a few and flip them. Predatory lending. And the Clintons, that's what everybody else did. There weren't any legitimately wealthy people. Everybody cheated people. I mean, hell, that's what liberals think anyway. They don't need to resent rich people on the come. They do anyway. They don't believe that wealth is legitimate unless it's inherited like the Kennedys. Matthew in Columbia, Maryland, I'm glad you waited. You're next on the EIB network. Hello, sir.
Hello, Rush. I guarantee absolutely that Martin O'Malley will be the Democratic nominee. Don't doubt me.
Why do you say that?
Because he's this generation's Bill Clinton. He's handsome, he talks well, he'll fight Hillary from the left, and most importantly, nobody wants Hillary. Everybody hates Hillary, but they're scared to death to say it.
When you say everybody, you mean in the media and on the media and on the left?
The media on the left, Hollywood, Matt Lauer, Savannah Guthrie, you name it. Nobody wants her, nobody likes her, but they're scared to death to say it.
Something about what you're saying is ringing a bell. And it's just recently that, and in fact, I even had it here. We talked about how that Hillary was really not loved and adored. It was just that the Republicans are hated more.
And I'll do you even better. Elizabeth Warren will be his running mate.
You think even O'Malley is going to overcome Hollywood's love for Elizabeth Warren and beat her, huh?
Yes, absolutely, because she's too inexperienced. She's too far wacko. But when you have Martin O'Malley as the front man, who's just as wacko and just as extreme as her, they're going to fall in love with him.
When do they care about wacko? Wacko is what they think is normal now.
Exactly, which is why Martin O'Malley will be the nominee. Hillary Clinton is Vladimir Putin. Everybody's scared to death of the retribution if they come out. Tom Hanks, all those Hollywood folks, they don't want to say that they're against Hillary. They don't want to say that they want Elizabeth Warren or Martin O'Malley.
Well, remember, they may still have those 900 FBI files. I mean, that's...
Yes, they do.
All
the media
right.
will latch on to Martin O'Malley. I guarantee he will be the Democratic
There
nominee.
you have it, folks. Martin O'Malley, the nominee from Matthew in Columbia, Maryland. If anybody would know, he would.
Somebody has to have the guts to say it. Rush on the EIB network. Radio.
One I gave you, it comes from, interestingly enough, Peter Schweitzer. And his book, what was the title of his book? Was Do As I Say, Not As I Do. And this page 108 and 109. Now, the Schweitzer book, Do As I Say, Not As I Do, was not a hit piece on the Clintons, per se. It was a book that chronicled the hypocrisy of a whole bunch of liberal politicians and public figures. It contained data, information on the Clintons, but if you remember, it hit a lot of people. And here's what Schweitzer wrote about Whitewater. When customers wanted to buy a lot, They signed a simple purchase agreement, but this was no ordinary real estate contract. The small print at the bottom read, in the event the default continues for 30 days, payments made by the purchaser shall be considered as rent for the use of the premises. So in other words, the buyers did not actually take ownership of their property until the final payment was made. If a buyer missed just one monthly payment, all of their previous payments would be classified as rent, and they would lose their equity. That's what Whitewater was. Miss one payment. Doesn't matter how much you've paid prior, you lose your equity. You're automatically reclassified as a renter. And guess where the equity it ended up being transferred to? Well, the people at Whitewater that ran it. It would be the McDougals and the Clintons. So you ended up losing all your equity. You became a renter if you missed just one payment. The fine print in the clause just read to you. And in some cases, they could foreclose. They could repossess. If you missed a couple, and then they just sell it and flip it again. That's what Whitewater was. It was a screw job. Anyway, there's a couple of things on this, and I'm going to try to focus on some phone calls because I've got a lot of people who have been patiently waiting. Back to the Washington Post story for just a second, because it's not just the New York Times getting in on this, and it's not just Judicial Watch, and it's not just the cable networks. For Clinton's speech income shows how their wealth is intertwined with charity. Bill Clinton was paid at least $26 million in speaking fees by companies and organizations that are also major donors to the foundation he created after leaving the White House. This according to the Washington Post. They did their own analysis of public records and foundation data. Now, the amount, about 1/4 of Clinton's overall speaking income between 2001 and 2013, Clinton made over $100 million making speeches. Now, who does that? $100 million. Now, granted, it was over 12 years, but who makes $100 million doing speeches? Hell, Henry Kissinger, you didn't even give. He didn't give that much per speech. Nobody get. Me? Oh, come on. I've never charged for a speech in my life, and I never would. That's another thing about this. I know that there are a lot of people who, they're part of a speaker's agency, and they charge 40 or 50. It's unseemly to me. I don't know why. I have never charged for, now the Rush to Excellence tour is not a speech. I mean, it's a performance, but the revenue always goes to charity or to the affiliate radio station. I sometimes took in the early days, I think I took $15,000 or whatever. But there were ticket prices. It wasn't some organization just paying me to come in and do it. I've had that offered. No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. No, Snurdly. Some people would offer me $1 million. No. Anyway, that's always seemed unseemly, but $100 million doing speeches. I think it's. I know. Bush and Reagan. I think they did. What is it? Reagan or Bush got $1 million from. Yeah, the left had Reagan got $1 million in a speech in Japan or something. Yeah. But it was a one-time thing. Here's Clinton. Anyway, so $100 million total. The Washington Post says that $26 million of that demonstrates how closely intertwined Bill and Hillary Clinton's charitable work has become with their growing personal wealth. And see, that's why people are now starting to call this a crime family operation. Now that she has formally entered the presidential race, the family may face political pressure and some legal requirements to provide further details of their personal finances and those of the foundation, giving voters a clearer view of the global network of patrons that have supported the Clintons and their work over the past 15 years. What work? What work? This is clearly influence buying, and it's buying it on the come. Everybody's known that Hillary's going to run in 2016, particularly the Democrats, particularly the Clintons. So Bill's out there giving speeches. She's Secretary of State. They are raising money from foreign entities. And the New York Times has blown the whistle on a big one about helping the Russians and Vladimir Putin become power players in the global uranium market. That is not a good deal. Anyway, the Washington Post continues to discuss in this story the very curious way that Bill Clinton got personally wealthy from donations to a charity. Remember, we revealed earlier in the program, thanks to thefederalist.com, they have examined there's a 15% pass-through rate at the Clinton Foundation, meaning you donate $1 and 15 cents goes to some charity. 85 cents of every dollar to the Clinton Foundation went to salaries, expenses, travel, and the big category, 60% other expenses, undefined. Ben Shapiro at Breitbart, Hillary Clinton 2.0, the money machine launches. Hillary Clinton's manufactured little people campaign's about to take a back seat to raising as much cash from as many wealthy donors as possible. According to the Huffing and Puffington Post, Hillary is already pumping her fundraisers, telling them that they ought to become part of the so-called Hill Starters campaign, in which they raise $2,700 from 10 people, and in exchange they get an audience with Hillary herself. And then Reuters, ladies and gentlemen, has a story talking about how the Clinton Family Foundation is having to go back and refile years and years worth of tax returns because of the information that has been made public this week. It's significant, the amount of tax returns they're having to refile. They're altering, they are changing, they're recategorizing income into certain different categories. I mean, it's a clear admission that they tried to get away with something. So the New York Times, the Washington Post, Reuters, the Federalist, PJmedia.com, which comes right out and says that all of this is essentially a crime family operation. And then Ron Fournier, who is at the National Journal, he says, I don't know what's in Peter Schweitzer's book, but I know what the Clintons are capable of. And here's how he starts this thing. Jennifer Flowers, Cattle Futures, the White House Travel Office, the Rose Law Firm, the Lincoln Bedroom, Monica Lewinsky, and now the Clinton Foundation. What ties these stories together is the predictable paint-by-numbers response from the Bill and Hillary Clinton political operation. Number one, you deny. Salient questions are dodged, the evidence goes missing, the stone wall is built. Number two, you deflect. Blame is shifted, usually to Republicans and the media. Number three, demean. People who question or criticize the Clintons get tarred as right-wing extremists, hacks, nuts, or sluts. The Bill and Hillary and Chelsea Clinton Foundation is both an admirable charity and a shadow political operation awash in conflicts of interest. The seedy side of the foundation is a legitimate campaign issue. While the Clintons deserve credit for making foundation donations largely transparent, but, Ron, 15% of every dollar donated, gets redonated. 15%? There isn't any good works going on here. He then goes on to ask, what did donors expect from the Clintons? Did they receive favors in return? Why did the Clintons do business with countries that finance terrorism and suppress the rights of women? Did family and friends benefit from their ties to the foundation? And, in a much broader sense, what do the operations of the foundation say about Hillary Clinton's management ability and ethical grounding? Ethical grounding? What, do we want to pretend there still is some? These questions are reportedly explored by the author Peter Schweitzer in a soon-to-be-published book, Clinton Cash, the untold story of how and why foreign governments and businesses helped make Bill and Hillary rich. I say reportedly because I haven't read the book yet. This is Fournier writing. I have no idea whether Schweitzer reveals any wrongdoing or relevant information. Scheduled for publication on May 5th, its contents are unknown, but that hasn't stopped the Clintons from denying, deflecting, and demeaning. So it is a veritable storm that has been launched on the Clintons with details. Does it appear that much is being held back? And it's devastating. It's unlike anything we've ever seen the drive-by media do and report about prominent Democrats, particularly the Clintons. Now, here are the Reuters details. Hillary Clinton's family charities are refiling at least 5 annual tax returns after a Reuters review found errors in how they reported donations from governments and said they may audit other Clinton Foundation returns in case of other errors. Foundation, its listed donors have been under intense scrutiny in recent weeks. Republican critics say the foundation makes Clinton vulnerable to undue influence. Her campaign team calls these claims absurd conspiracy theories. The charity's errors generally take the form of underreporting or overreporting by millions of dollars, donations from foreign governments, or in other instances, omitting to break out government donations entirely when reporting revenue. The errors, which have not been previously reported, appear on the Form 990S that all nonprofit organizations must file annually with the IRS to maintain their tax-exempt status. And a charity has to show copies of the forms to anyone who wants to see them to understand how the charity raises and spends its money. That's how it has been discovered that they have a pass-through rate of 15%. They can't hide that. And as Michael Walsh asks here in reporting the Reuters story, what difference does it make who the head of the crime syndicate is? For 3 years in a row, beginning in 2010, the Clinton Foundation reported to the IRS that it received zero. Oh, now this is big. For 3 years in a row, beginning in 2010, it'll be 10, 11, and 12, the Clinton Foundation reported to the IRS that it received absolutely no money from foreign and U.S. governments, a dramatic fall-off from the tens of millions of dollars in foreign government donations that they reported in previous years. It turns out those entries were errors, according to the foundation. Yes, it turns out that it wasn't no money that was donated. There we goofed up. It turned out it was millions and millions, so they're having to refile now. They're refiling because they got caught. They're not refiling because they caught themselves. Quick timeout. Back with much more after this, my friends. Do not go away.
He didn't start it, but he'll be happy to finish it. Rush on the EIB network.
The new...
And back to the phones we go. People patiently waiting, and this is John in Fort Wayne, Indiana. John, great to have you. Thank you so much for holding on.
Well, thank you so much. Rush, this is an important question for me. I think it would be interesting for your listeners. A great mind like yours, or a great athlete, when they're gifted and they train, as you know better than I, they become the best. They're in the Hall of Fame or they're... And so I was wondering, in your case, you must have been gifted, but how did you begin? Did you spend all-nighters? Did you memorize certain books? Did you drink 8 cups of coffee a day and sleep 4 hours? I mean, did you finally find a groove of how to study? In other words, a particular portion of politics, helped you get the overall scheme, and then when you studied or you memorized, I guess you get my gist of it. I don't want to take 20 minutes just going over this question because of your other callers, but I would, and I'm sure other people would like to know how you began. What was your sojourn as far as your studying and your accumulation of all these facts and knowledge and writing ability?
Wow. I don't know how to... I mean, I know you're asking this question seriously.
Well, it's a serious question, and there's no double entendre. Like I'm trying to figure out, well, why are you so this and that?
No, I know. I know you're it's serious, and I don't want to be flippant with you. I mean, I don't want to appear to not take your question seriously. But I'm not. I don't see myself that way. Number one, but let me tell you a little story that I had the occasion one evening to have dinner with Henry Kissinger. And I decided that I was just going to throw everything to the wind and just ask him. I didn't care if the question seemed stupid. There were things I'd been wanting to ask him ever since I first heard of him. And one of the questions I asked him, it was in William Buckley's house, and it was in the drawing room. It was after dinner. And Buckley and I are smoking cigars, and the room is just thick with smoke. And Kissinger didn't smoke, but he didn't care. He was a trooper sitting in there, and his wife Nancy was there. And I said, Dr. Kissinger, can I ask you a personal question? And he sat there as the brilliant, superior person that he is. Yes, of course. You may. What is the question? I said, I am dying to know how in the world you decided to deal with the North Vietnamese when it was time for that peace process in Paris. I said, you are undoubtedly the most brilliant man in any government in the world. How did you deal with the North Vietnamese? Was there anybody that you were dealing with that was on your level? Did you have to make a concerted effort to get down to their level, or was there somebody that was nearly your intellectual equal? And he sat there and nodded his head, and he was seriously considering the question. And he did not refute my premise. He accepted the premise that he was by far the intellectual giant of all the people there. Was, and not in an offensive way. It wasn't offensive at all. I've got a break I have to take here, but John, don't hang up, because I will complete this story when we get back.
Drew, Steve.
And we're back with John in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So, John, I'm asking Dr. Kissinger in this smoke-filled room, and anybody else would have reacted to the smoke. I mean, it was that much. The room didn't have any ventilation. But he didn't say a word. It was what it was, and he was his presence was overwhelming. And I'm asking him how in the world he managed to relate with the North Vietnamese negotiators. They're a small country, not a lot of people there, communists, brutal people, in our way of thinking, uncivilized compared to us. How in the world did you form a bond with them? Were they able to get up to your level? Did you have to get down to their level? And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he did not refute my premise, John. He did not disagree that he was the smartest guy in the world. He did not disagree the smartest guy in the room. He accepted my premise and answered it as such. He said, well, you must remember that Ho Chi Minh was educated in America. So on many levels, I was dealing with people who already knew the way that things are done in this country. And I had to realize this going in, that I did not have a cultural advantage at all whatsoever. They were brutal. You're exactly right. That's what separated the two. They were just brutal. That's how they got things done. And he ended up explaining what it was like the first 3 weeks of the peace talks were an argument over the layout of the table, for crying out loud. But the only reason I tell you this story is because you're asking me, how I train with my. I don't know. I'm not. I don't think of myself the way you do, but I appreciate that you do. Don't misunderstand. Here's what I do. Let me just tell you what I do. I have been really lucky in my life. I have been able to focus on my passions. I have been able to focus on the things that I love, and so none of it has appeared. None of it seemed like work to me. Now, there were problematic days when I was a DJ, and it took me a while to get to this point where I had the time to do what I wanted to do and devote it to the way I wanted to do it. But I would say the specific answer to your question is, let me answer it this way. I can't say the number of media people who have said, you know what, we would love to follow you around for a day to see how you prepare. We would love to show our viewers what it's like to get ready for the program. I said, no, you don't want to do that. Why not? I said, because you better be prepared to see me sitting for hours and reading. That's all I do. I don't collaborate with anybody. I don't call anybody. I don't send anybody notes. I don't ask people what they think about this. I just absorb. That is all I do. I have years and years of accumulated knowledge and accumulated opinion, and it all gets added to the base, and I either confirm what I believe or change my mind about things here or there. But there's nothing to see. You're going to see me sitting somewhere. You're going to see me sitting on a couch. You're going to see me sitting at a desk and sitting in a chair and smoking cigars. That's what you're going to see. There's nothing to see because it all takes place where nobody can see what's going on, and that's in my brain. I mean, I don't know how exciting that would be, but that's what I do.
When you're reading your books, do you write in the margins? Do you color code? Do you have a certain schemata that you go with that you can see at a glance after you're done with your reading work?
If there's something that I want to remember, I reread it 10 times.
Wow.
And if there's something I really, really want to never forget, I write it down myself. I verbatim what I've just read. I read when I did apply myself in college, which was like 1 or 2 courses, or when I went to the radio school, the way I would study, I would take as detailed notes as I could. And then the first thing I did when I got home is start rewriting them almost as verbatim as I could remember. No shortcuts, no shorthand, no leaving out adjectives. I rewrote everything by hand at the time. I didn't even have a typewriter. And I found by doing that, I never forgot it.
I love that. I love that, Rush. I love it.
But rereading it, sometimes now, on an iPad, you can make a note. You can highlight a passage and make a note and always have it as a reference point. The problem I have with that is remembering what I've made notes about in order to find the notes. So I've developed a system for that. But I don't do that very much. I'm not a speed reader. I take my time. I verbalize what I read. This is the biggest objective, the biggest obstacle to speed reading is silently speaking what you read. And every speed read teacher tries to get the student to stop pronouncing the word verbally, to stop pronouncing it, don't pronounce the punctuation, don't pronounce this, just absorb the words. Don't read it to you. Well, I don't do that. I make sure that as I'm reading, I actually can hear myself saying it.
Wow.
So I read kind of slow compared to, I don't scan. If I'm really interested in it, I absorb it. Another thing, though, I have also learned that you don't have to read everything to get the gist. I know, for example, in a news story where the news is and where it isn't. So in a 750-word column, I'll probably read 300 to 400 words.
When you're reading these books, Rush, and you're using your capacity, do you take anything for energy? Do you eat? I know this sounds stupid, but do you eat something, a specific thing while you're reading, or drink a cup of coffee or something to keep your synapses.
You know, folks, you're going to think this is crazy. I can relate to this guy's question because, you know, when I watch a football game, I wonder what the players had for pregame, especially guys having a great day. Okay, what was the pregame meal? I do not eat while I'm, if I'm reading a novel, I may munch on something. If I am reading for work, I don't eat. I have a cigar, maybe a Diet Coke there, but I don't have any noise. The TV's off, literally no noise in the room. It has to be.
How about coffee?
Only in the morning. Okay. That's the coffee's unrelated to the study. Okay. Coffee's just what I need to get going in the morning. Probably hot water would suffice. It's just something hot. But no, there's no nutritional component, if you're asking me that.
Well, I meant for energy, not nutritional in the nutritional sense.
Oh,
just something to get those synapses going. Like you're reading 700 things. You're not reading out loud. You're absorbing.
Oh well, now there are days that I'm unable to focus like I'd like to. There are days I just don't want to do it. Well, moments in a day where I don't want to do it. If that happens, I just stop. I don't fight it. I put it down and pick up a novel, watch a television show, or I don't do something and then come back to it later. But there's no external stimuli that I use to get going if I'm flat. I just wait till it happens.
Oh, that's good.
But I don't think I'm flattered that you're asking me all this. I don't even think about this until you're asking me about it. I just do it.
That's the amazing thing. That's the amazing thing because I know. Well, I don't know a lot of scholars, but I know a few who.
Well, see, I'm not a scholar. I'm rejected by scholars. I'm considered unserious by people with formal education.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Well, no, it's class oriented. It's the way it is. Plus, being on radio to a lot of people is the lowest rung of the showbiz ladder. TV's where I hate television. The older I get, the more I hate it because it's collaborative and it's phony and it's all you got to do all this stuff before you even get to by the time you're ready to do the TV show, I've forgotten half of what I wanted to say because I've got to talk to the makeup artist and I've got a producer and collaborate here and there, and it's just a giant distraction.
Yes.
I mean, two and a half hours of meetings to do a 20-minute TV show, and I haven't done one meeting ever for this radio show. So, anyway, I appreciate the question, but I've always just chalked all this up to being blessed with a half-decent memory, which I really chalk up to I'm just fortunate I'm able to combine the things I really am interested in and fascinated by with my job. In fact, that is my job. So that's what I care about. I think anybody doing what you really care about, you're going to know more of it, remember more of it. You're going to be able to keep track of it and have immediate recall on things that you need. If you're devoted to it, if you've adapted to the circumstances necessary to learn, so forth. I just view myself actually as having been. In fact, I got into an argument. This may help you. When I was refusing to go to college. And my dad was just beside himself, considering himself a failure as a parent because he couldn't convince me to go to college. And if I didn't go to college in his world, I was never going to amount to anything because he came out of Great Depression where if you didn't have a degree, you weren't going to get a job. And I told him that I wanted to be like William F. Buckley one day. He said, well, what do you mean by that? I want to be able to sit around and just learn. I want to be able to sit here and read. I want to be able to sit here and write. I don't have to go to some class And he gave me the biggest lecture. Well, how do you think Buckley got to where he is? You think he's just been sitting around his whole life and so forth? And we had a big knockdown drag out about it. He said, you can't look at people who are, at the time I'm 19 years old now, you can't look at people who are 45 and 50 and think they started there. You're looking at where they are. You think you want to be there tomorrow, but that's not how they got there. He was constantly trying to pummel common sense into me. And he did, more often than he knew. But, John, I got to go. I appreciate the question very much. And I hope the answer's satisfactory. We've got a quick timeout, but back with more after this.
In every corner of this world,
Rush.
Your name is a household name.
Limbaugh.